So,
Hi, everyone. Welcome. And thank you for joining us here on Research on the Road. This is Earth Week, and we're so excited that you're able to join us. Today, we have a special guest, a high school teacher all the way from Idaho. Hi, Glenn. I say greetings in Marshallese because I knew Glenn from a long time ago when we were in Micronesia slash Marshall Islands. And we were in the same cohort in our Masters of Outdoor Education with Southern Adventist University. Glenn, what do you do now?
I'm currently a high school teacher here at Jim State Adventist Academy. I teach about 6 classes and different sciences and 1 pre-algebra class, and it keeps me pretty much full time.
Yeah, that sounds busy, all right. Now, what I remember from you when we went to Boundary Waters, you said that wherever you teach, you always have some kind of habitat for your creatures, for your animals. What do you have there at Gem State?
Well, there's my classroom becomes a habitat, and I don't like empty rooms. I mean, I paint them, I make them colorful. I have plants, I have taxidermied animals, but I like the live animals in there. I think the live animals bring sort of a personality to the classroom. They make it alive. And I have found too that in some ways, these living things do connect with the students, which I may not have connected before. And so, and that's only from my years of experience. And I know not everyone likes, say, a rat or a snake or certain animals, but with having different animals, different people do respond. And I have seen changes in students toward animals in a positive way because they've been exposed to them, they had to work with them, and getting to know it is all it takes just to get them going in that direction of knowing the animals.
That's true because there's always a creature or there's always an animal that a person connects with, whether from their childhood or in their adult life. Now, I'm going to put a spotlight on you so you can go ahead and just share the few things, because I know you have a lot, Glenn. So just share a few things of what you already have in your classroom. Go ahead.
Okay, well, a lot of the stuff are mammals. I've done a lot of work with rats and I do mice, but the mice are easier because they're smaller, but yet the mice come with a smell. So I will show you some of these little stinky things. We have one cage right here. There you go. Oh, maybe a little hard, a lot of reflection, but
That's
I'll just
okay.
put it down here and I'll bring one out
What are they called?
and there. There.
It's a mouse.
Yep, just a mouse. I
Does he
know.
have red eyes? Do they have red
Yeah,
eyes?
this is an
Oh,
albino.
I've had those in the classroom.
Yeah, an albino mouse because it has no pigments in it, so it's just white with pink eyes.
Oh,
And what's nice about them is, they're pretty easy to work with.
what's his name?
I've had so many mice, I don't have names for them. And some of the students usually name them more than I do.
Yeah.
I work with them. We use them for, well, I have to be honest, a lot of my mice are for food for other animals. I do have a lot of snakes,
Okay.
and so they eat
Okay.
these. But we have some where we had one student use them for genetics, where they study the different colors of the mice.
Oh,
And
cool.
then some people just have them as pets. I have some students, they like to get them out and they just take them, play with them on their desk. It's just, and because it's small, it's easy to work with. It doesn't make you afraid, like, oh, it's a big animal, it might bite me or something. It's just
Yeah.
tiny.
Yeah.
But when you work with the little animals, you do have to help people understand, like, you don't come up and grab it right here. Because if you grab it, it might bite because it thinks you're squeezing it. So
Oh.
I usually pick them up by the tail, just for a little bit.
Oh.
They're fine.
Yeah.
They're
Okay.
not that heavy.
So are they male or female or how?
This one's a male.
Okay.
And you can see in the back, there's the female. And just about a week or 2 weeks ago, she had baby mice.
Oh, wow.
And that's another thing that I've used mice for. I'll set them back in there. Now, another thing this could work well in any school setting. I use it for high school, but what would work well is you have a male and female mouse and they reproduce and they have babies. Then watch the babies as they grow. In my high school classes, they keep track of them and they watch them grow. And before they know it, they're big mice. And it's like watching something grow pretty fast. And yet, in the same time, you could say, well, you were small and you grew.
Yeah.
And with the mouse.
Yeah.
We've had bigger animals like rats. I've done the rats before, and they're pretty good size. And I've done genetics. We've done growth studies with the rats. And right now, I'm at the low end. I only have 2 rats. I've had up to like 30 rats in my room.
Oh my.
That's because of the, breeding them, watching them grow, and of course.
Okay.
But now the rats only last about 2 years, and then they get old, and they don't last so long.
Yeah, true.
And they're bigger. Other things I've had, right now I had a rabbit, and my rabbit stays here in the wintertime. And I have a little cage, indoor cage, and the rabbit stays in the winter. In the spring, when it gets warm, it goes back to my house. But when it's here at school, you can take the rabbit out, set it on the desk, you can pet it. But the rabbit has a lot of fur. And so we have a rolly, one of those lint rollers, because it picks up all the fur.
Okay.
And then I guess one of the animals I've worked the most with is fostering cats. I started in Bakersfield where at a park they had over 300 cats. People just leave them there. They dump them there for whatever reason. And so I would take the kittens and work with them to make them bigger. I would help them so they get older. I would make sure they get friendly, give them food, they get their medicine, and then they go to the shelter to be fixed. And then they go up for adoption, and then people can take them home. So that's, and of course, I use that part of my curriculum. So I had cats, I've had rabbits, mice, rats. I've had reptiles. I've had snakes, lizards. I have geckos. I have some lizards that I had from California. I have some tortoises, Russian tortoises. I have some water turtles. I actually built a pond in my backyard, so some of my turtles go back to the pond. We have birds. We have a cockatiel. We have a parakeet. We've actually did the breeding of parakeets, and they got to watch the parakeets grow. Insects, I've had cockroaches. I got cockroaches now, but not many people are fond of cockroaches.
Of course.
In the islands, we had so many cockroaches, it was a nuisance, but here they're sort of interesting to look at. We have praying mantis around here. And in the fall, we bring the praying mantis, and we catch the big ones, the praying mantis, and then you can put them on a stick and the students can watch them up close. And then you give them a grasshopper or a cricket and you can watch them eat. And so that's interesting with the praying mantis. I know some places do the butterflies. You get the eggs or the caterpillars, caterpillars, and get the butterflies.
Well, we have to do a segment on that for sure.
That one, that has its own, that one you can get from scientific companies, and I've done it on my own. I never bought any. I just did them on my own.
Okay.
There's all kinds of stuff you can have. It's just, it takes, you have to think about it before you put them into your room. I've known people who had dogs, small dogs in their classroom. I have fish. I have an aquarium with tropical fish. A lot of people do tropical fish. They're pretty
big. True.
And I have a couple of catfish, and they're pretty big, and they're little monsters. When you give them food, they just munch away.
Yeah.
I got some toads. I got some frogs. I've had so many different kinds of little animals, and sometimes we keep them for a while and we put them back out. Like we find them outside, we bring them into the class a little bit, and then we put them outside. Or some of the domestic ones you can keep for all year. But again, you have to think about it, think of the time it takes.
Yeah.
Because I have all these animals, it's hard for me to leave. I just can't go on a vacation and for 2 weeks and say, I'm going to be gone somewhere, because the animals need constant care. Like snakes, I can leave them for 2 weeks and they would be fine. With a cat or kittens, I have to be here twice a day. So the requirements, of the animals, you have to think about. But I know some schools or teachers, I've read stories where they let a student take the animal home for the weekend.
True.
To get the care for it. And of course, if you make sure the student's knows how to take care of it, and the parents give you permission and stuff, that works too. Sometimes where people buy into it, and not all students may want to do that. It's like, I don't want the hamster or something.
Yeah, actually, I've done that, chickadees and parakeets, and students took them home.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah, go ahead.
What do you feed those guys? They're quite active there back there.
These guys get fed a mixture of grain. Walmart's a good source of food.
Okay.
They have this stuff called mouse block, and it's pretty cheap, but yet I give them extra stuff. You don't usually buy one type of food and that's all you give them. I give them a variety of stuff. They get grain, dog food. I give them fresh greens. They love dandelions and clover, and we have a lot of it coming up now because it's spring, and even the flowers a little bit. They don't like the flowers too much, I found out. They take their flowers and put them into their water bowl. Yeah,
wow.
Or even some stuff from home, like bread or macaroni. I don't give them processed foods like cheese or baked things, because that makes them fat little creatures.
Yeah.
Sometimes they can get sick because they get that food that we eat that we can handle may not be so good for them. But again, if you get an animal, you have to research, well, what do I feed it? And do you have a good source for it? Like a coconut crab, that won't work here.
Yeah.
People know about coconut crabs, but you have to have special fruits and maybe some vegetables and coconut and maybe a little bit of meat. But that may not be so easy to get to feed that little animal.
That's true.
For a while, but mice, you can feed them a lot of things and they'll last pretty good. So food is a big consideration. But there's a lot of stores that carry food. There's Petco, there's PetSmart. They're a little pricey, but they have a lot of food for your critters.
That's true. What do you have a worst case scenario story that you didn't anticipate? It doesn't have to be gross, but something that had happened in the classroom with a pet that you probably didn't have before, or you did, but then something happened.
I think the worst case, for me, I guess what has happened is when an animal's gotten away, escaped. I'll give the one story that happened here 5 years ago. I had this snake, a king snake, and I have this special cage I built for it, and it works. But I had a student who wanted to go inside the cage to see the snake. I wasn't around. He was in the classroom. He came in and he broke the door open. And of course, he didn't know how to fix it. He closed the door, didn't tell me about it. And I came in the evening, checking up on stuff, and I saw the door open a little bit. And I looked in the cage and the snake was gone. Now it's a harmless snake. And that snake was the story or the joke for the school. I looked all over the school, everywhere, and I did not find that snake. And that was like in October.
Yeah.
Well, keep teaching, keep working. And sometimes what I would do is, I was living in Oregon, but I taught in Idaho. So I was going home on home leaves. And so I would take my mice, my extra animals, put them on the tables in my classroom. So someone that lived here, a staff member would. Now in the spring, she came in to feed the mice, and that snake was on top of a cage, curled up, waiting for a mouse. And her husband, she called her husband. She was our school register. She called her husband. He caught it. He put it in the cage and closed it up. And we found the snake. So what had happened is that snake got out, crawled around the room, found a little corner in under the lab cabinets and hibernated. And then when it got spring and warm and he was hungry, he came out and he climbed on the tables, got on the cage, and he knew these mice were there, but he couldn't get to them. So we got the snake, and the snake's right now back in his cage. And today he's eating another snake. King snakes eat other snakes. And on our field trip, we found a gopher snake that had been run over by a car. So every spring, I give him a dead snake to eat, a fresh snake. If it's rotten.
Yeah.
But he's done with it now, and he'll be done. He's good for the month.
Oh, wow. So what did the staff do if whole time?
The female staff were very, I'm not saying they weren't very pleased with me, but because they did not want to find a snake in their room.
Yeah.
And I tried everything possible, but of course they thought originally I had, because of my mistake, had the snake got away.
Yeah.
We found out it was the student, and this student is sort of famous in getting into mischief. And that made it quite clear. It's like, okay, now we understand. And so talk about it. I always say my cage has never had a successful escape unless some human does it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, how has COVID changed everything with any of the creatures?
Pretty much with COVID, whether you're online or you have students, I still have to keep feeding them and taking care of them. But I've had to restrict, I guess, access of students to animals.
Oh,
and we had several students this year who got COVID. And of course, we find out about it, and that student was just here a couple days ago. And so, and I know I've heard on the news media that some animals can pick it up, like gorillas, I've heard tigers and cats. Well, I have cats here, and so I couldn't let them hold the cats, because if they picked it up, because not everyone is in the dorm, their village, so they can technically bring it to school, share it with humans and to the cats, and that would be a mess. And so I just had to keep the contact away from them. They could see them, but they couldn't interact with them as much.
Okay. Now you said that you built a habitat for the snakes. Do you have that there, or was it at another school?
It's here. I made it so I can take it apart and put it back together. It's my own design. You will never see another one anywhere else. I start because I had snakes in aquariums, like, what the mice are in.
Yeah.
But it's like aquarium after aquarium after aquarium. Trying to find aquariums with good lids to keep snakes in is, that's a challenge. And plus, where do you put the aquariums? I was walking through Lowell's, and they had in their one section those utility shelves where you can put them together. Well, I bought one. It was $70, and it has, the plywood. I mean, not the plywood, but a shelf, a wood shelf, and you put the metal together. But I took plywood and put it on the outside, and I put trim on the edges, on the corners. I put doors, put a windows, and I put it so I could have lights inside. And now this past year, I have it so it has vent holes, and the doors are lockable now. They all have locks, and they have little sliders. And let's see, what else did I do? Oh, I put wheels on it now. It's heavy. It's too heavy to push. But with wheels, I can wheel it into one of my rooms. So I have my little office. Because my first year here, I had one student that said she was deathly afraid of snakes. And so to minimize people who are afraid of snakes, I put it on wheels so I could put it in a room. But it's easy to wheel out. But I built it in Roseburg, Oregon. I took it apart and put it in Bakersfield. And then when I left Bakersfield, I took it apart and brought it here to Roseburg. And that's the beauty of it. And I'm willing to share if someone wants to build something like that, and you can keep other things in it. It doesn't have to be snakes. You could put lizards, or I don't know if you want to put rodents in there because rodents pee and stuff, but you could put other kind of critters in there. And it's nice, you know, it doesn't take up that much space. It's basically the same dimensions as that utility shelves.
It must help to have a designated area for them instead of in the aquarium, I'm guessing.
Yes. Well, like I said, I have one room. I mean, my classroom's unique because it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 closets. Yeah, because this has the classroom and the lab are one big room. And then you have these closets that branch off. And the one room used to be the kitten room, but now it's for my reptiles. I keep all my snakes in there. And I have different rooms, have different supplies. And so having the animals in these different rooms helps. I have one room where, because here we have snow, it gets cold. And for some of the tropical animals, you know, I can air condition the room, but I can't heat it. The school turns on the heat, and then when it gets warm,
yeah, that's right.
So I have to put them in a smaller room, and then there I just put in a little heater, and it's easy for me to heat a little room than the big room. And therefore I can keep my animals, the tropical ones, you know, all year in that little room. And when it gets warmer, then I just turn the heat off. And of course, in the wintertime, sometimes the students like going to that room because it's warm. No, but it's warm. But you know, I have cages built into some of the cabinets here. We built a big bird cage off in the back here. So some of the things I have built into the room, special cages.
Okay, I see.
So, but you could be as fine with just an aquarium, like an elementary teacher, just have an aquarium with a screen lid, self-contained, and you can pick it up, move it wherever you like. I invest a lot more into it. And of course, I spend a lot of time into it too.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. True. Have you ever had a Jackson chameleon? I want to have one.
I tried to get one from Hawaii. My son bought this kit. He knew someone in Hawaii. He sent her the kit. It was a mailing kit. She caught the chameleon and mailed it back, but it was during the winter time. The kit's supposed to have a little heat pack. Well, I got the chameleon, but it wasn't alive.
Oh no. Well, you gave me $40, Glenn, from when we were in Boundary Waters, so I still have to get you one.
Well, we did get a chameleon here at the pet store, and we had it for about 2 years, and it was a female. She laid eggs, and she was in that tropic room all the time. You know, you give her bugs, and of course it was fun to bring her out because you see the tongue come out and insects. And but chameleons can be sort of, as if you were to put a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being difficult for taking care of reptiles, chameleons might be like a 5. They require some special care. I have right now some geckos. They're like a 1 or 2. You put the bugs in water and they do fine. You know, they don't require a lot of care. And that's another factor when you're getting an animal. Like I said, you know, we talked about time, we talked about food. Another one is what kind of care do you have to give that animal? And so my oldest son, he specializes, like he has they call it a cane toad. They come from South America, and they're an invasive species in Australia and many parts of the world. They're highly poisonous to animals like cats and dogs if they lick them. And so he bought one, and he made his cage to sort of match the environment of that toad, and the toad's thriving.
Wow.
But again, he specialized in making that cage fit the toad's need. And this is our second toad, because he bought one before and I was taking care of it, and I didn't do as much care with it, and it died, and he was not happy. So he researched it, built a better cage. Now he has his toad, and he still has it at home. You know,
cool.
Here. So. And
what reptiles do you have again? You said you have geckos.
Okay, we have geckos. I have some lizards from California. Okay. And because our school does a STEM trip, and I picked these lizards, you know, these are wild stuff. It's not ones from the pet store. And they're still surviving. I actually had one girl She was a boarding student. She went to California, found a lizard, put it in her suitcase, and brought it back. That was 5 years ago. The lizard's still alive in this cage.
Oh, wow.
Big. You put food in your hand, it'll eat out of your hand.
Wow.
And it's
Yeah.
so we have lizards. Let's see, the geckos, the lizards. I've had bearded dragons before. That's a popular one people like. Or
Yeah.
iguanas. Iguanas can be challenging because they get big. Iguanas can.
Yeah.
I got 12 snakes. I have about probably about 10 different species of snakes.
Okay.
And some of them have to be individually housed and some can be together. And I use those because they have different colors, different patterns. I have tortoises, land tortoises. They're called Russian tortoises.
Uh-huh.
And then what else do I have? Water turtles I used to have here, but I have them at home because they got too big. So I just leave them in our pond in the backyard. But I do have a soft-shelled turtle, and it was really small. And when I kept it in an aquarium, it didn't grow well. I put it in a big aquarium with the bubblers and fish, and that thing's now this big. It's huge.
Wow.
So I have, I've been contemplating getting like a caiman, which is like an alligator, but that costs $300. And I think you were asking me about, well, where do you get these things? Now, if you find stuff locally, you can find it outside. It's best to keep it for a little bit and then put it back. But you can get it from pet stores locally, like PetSmart, Petco, or you can go online and you can buy stuff online. And that's where you can get more exotic stuff. But again, it's how much do you want? That's another factor. How much do you want to spend?
How much do I spend? Yeah.
Of course, I do have a paper mache dinosaur. It's on the wall. It's all, it's sort of life size, I guess. My son made it. He likes making models of things. But I've done all sorts of stuff. I did in Majuro. I had a sea turtle, a little sea turtle, called him Lou. Had him for about 6-8 months. Then I put him back in the ocean. But he would swim around in the aquarium and you give him food, fish, and stuff like that. And I used to watch him chase the other fish around the aquarium. He was a cute little sea turtle. So I've had a sea turtle at one time, but some of these animals you're not supposed to have. By law, there's legal animals you can have and not have.
Does it vary per state, like when you were in California and then now Idaho?
It could be, yeah. There's stuff here that, like these California lizards, well, some of them are here. The species are also here too, but some of them may not be here. So if you happen, basically you're not supposed to take them into different states. So that's why, for me, I use them strict, like the one student brought it. The other one was because we were on a STEM trip, and I bring them here and I use them for education. I use them for teaching my classes. But it's best not to take wild stuff out of state. If you're in state, keep what's there and keep it there. I've had raccoons, I've had possums. I've had, the raccoon was more of a caged animal, but I actually had a pet possum. And the thing was big, and we had it at summer camp, and I could bring it into my house, and she walked around. Her name was Susan, and I take her to school. And I actually, in Kansas, actually raised possums because my son found a bunch of babies laying all over the road. So we've worked with animals like that. So usually larger animals, you can rehab them or help them or find homes for them. Like we found here, owls. I rescued an owl in our back field. A great horned owl was beating up the barn owl. So I caught it, kept it in a kennel. I used it as a lesson for my class, but then I took it to the rehab people and they take care of that. So
when you teach a lesson, I'm guessing you find it much more effective when you have the creature as opposed to when you don't have the creature.
Yes, I will say, and you can make lessons off if you find, like I say, praying mantis. That's a little unit right there. I used to do one on spiders, and we would learn all about spiders, types of spiders, and then I'd take them outside, and they had to collect a spider, and they had to try to identify what the spider was. They had little jars and stuff, and we have lots of black widows here, and that's one of my favorite spiders here. I've had tarantulas. My best tarantula died this past year. I had her for over 15.
Oh wow, sorry.
Lasted a long time, and she was gentle. You could hold her. She would crawl on you. I mean, she was a very sweet spider, if you were to call spiders sweet.
How
But
did she die?
old age, they only last so long, and that's another thing to consider. You know, some of these animals don't last long; they die, and it's like, why did it die? It's like, well, they get old. They don't last. Like my rats, only a couple years. You know, cats are longer. Snakes, I have snakes that are pretty old. I've had them for 20 years now. So
How many do you have?
I have about 12 snakes. So I have 12 snakes, and I got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lizards, and I got 1, 2, 3, 4 turtles, not counting the what I have at home in my backyard in the pond. But the ones in the pond in the backyard are local species.
Well, Glenn, thank you so much for sharing. Do you mind if Daniel shares what he has so you know what he has?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, hi, my name is Daniel Quinones. I'm a student at Loma Linda University. I just was accepted into the master's PhD program underneath Dr. Hayes, and I have had a love and passion for animals since I was 2 years old. My mom said when I was 2, she let me outside. We used to live in Texas, and I picked up a horned lizard and brought it into the house. And then by the age of 3, I was not allowed into the house unless I had emptied my pockets of whatever living creature was inside of them. So that has been my life since the beginning, and it will continue to be. But I was overhearing all of the incredible creatures that you have had and that you actually have in your classroom with your students. What grade do you teach, sir?
The grades are 9 to 12, but I've done grades 5 to 5. I've done 5 to 12 with animals.
Some of my favorite professors when I was in high school, I went to San Diego Academy in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Some of them would have multiple reptiles in their classrooms, and I thought it was awesome because my first love was reptiles, so I thought it was the coolest thing. As I got older, though, I started collecting my own. Have you heard of a species called Uroplatus?
I've heard possibly. I may have heard them, but I'm not as familiar with them.
The leaf-tailed gecko from Madagascar.
Okay.
There are various different species. One of those, probably one of my favorite species that I had a breeding group of 8 animals, so four pairs each. It took me like 3 years to acquire them. I spent about a year working on their cages. I actually built vivariums for them, keeping temperatures around 72 degrees. If it was any higher, they would die, and if it was any lower, they wouldn't breed. It was a nightmare, but probably the most fun I've ever had. And I completely agree with you. It's a lot of fun when you're investing into the cage and their environment and actually like working with them and making the tank look beautiful. One of the girls that I have here with me, her name is Sueño. Since we're talking about pets that I think that fit best in the classroom, just as you said, a very common animal, the bearded dragon. They make great pets due to the fact that they're very easy to care for, very low maintenance, and once they get older, they usually don't have a very bad temperament and are great around kids of any age group. Sometimes they get hungry or they want to, travel around, but I completely agree with you 100%. One of my favorite animals. I've always had a bearded dragon. You said you currently have some?
We had one years ago. It was here at the school when I moved here, and it finally passed away. I imagine it could have been because of the cold, because our school didn't have a good heating system. But it could have been too because it may have been old, because I don't know how long it's been here or how long. So I had no age and stuff, but it was very friendly. I had some students that just loved holding the thing.
Yeah.
So Daniel, Sueño looks a little bigger.
Oh, Sueño's huge. She's actually gravid right now. So yeah, she's gonna pop out some eggs here any second, probably anywhere between 18 to 26. I'm averaging for her just because of her size and her last couple of clutches that she's had before. Yeah, no, she's pretty girthy. And she's eating really
she
well.
wasn't that big when I saw her last.
No, she is She is very large. I would consider this possibly even obese, which isn't good for the liver when it comes to reptiles. But you also mentioned that you had some snake species I overheard. You said some
Yeah.
that weren't able to be housed with others. I'm assuming some king snakes.
Yes, I have a couple king snakes. We got, let's see, I have a milk snake.
Oh, that's a nice
The
piece.
Honduran milk snake. That was a pet store variety. Of course, when
Yeah.
you buy from the pet store, sometimes you get these GMO snakes, I guess is the best way to call them. They have mixtures. I have a black rat snake, which again was the pet store. I have a Great Plains rat snake, which was one that came with me when I left Kansas. and
Oh, nice.
it's a pretty good size one. Let's see what else we got. I got a couple gopher snakes, one from California and one's more local. And
So yours would be more of a bull snake, while the western side would be a gopher.
yeah, well, here there's still technically gopher snakes. If you go into Wyoming, then you get
Idaho. Okay, I see where you are. Okay.
and so because I was in Wyoming a couple years ago with that dinosaur dig.
Oh, with
And we
Southwestern
found them,
Adventist University.
Yes, well, we went with them. That was that group. Our union here provided we would like to encourage teachers to go on this. So we went there. And so we found one. And of course, you can look at the face, is the facial features that separate the bull from the gopher snakes. But then if you go to the Western gopher snakes, like the one from California, is technically PUC area, it has the orange, sort of a reddish on the back, whereas the ones up here, they're more of a cream and brown. And I had one from Southern California that was more of a just very strong cream. And so you have your local variations. I had one from Oregon, which had a little more brown to it. I had quite a few gopher snakes a couple years ago, but a sickness came along and it killed every gopher snake. They stopped eating and they just shriveled up. They would not eat and they died. And even in the cage and there were other snakes in the cage, it didn't affect the other snakes, just the gophers.
Just your gophers.
And I was like, okay. I had one gopher snake that survived, and the only reason was he was completely isolated in another cage, somewhere else small.
Separated from the rest.
Then I have, let's see, I did the black rat, the great, corn snakes.
Corn snake. Oh,
Standard red corn snake. I have an albino. I had this GMO version, which is yellow. Yeah. The one I have is more red. It's more of a red. And
a red Okatee.
yeah, and it may, again, there's all these different varieties. And of course,
pretty
the
color.
yellow one I got is pretty friendly, but she was given to me. I went to the pet store because I had one before that died. And so I went to the store looking for one, and I was looking at them, and the pet store guy came up. It was a Petco or PetSmart. And he says, oh, we have one that someone just dropped off here at the store, cage and all. They left it on our back porch. If you give a donation, we'll give you the snake and cage. So I said, can I look at it? He showed it to me. I bought it. I mean, I gave him a donation of $20 and I got this. And it's my biggest snake of the corn snakes. It's, I mean, huge.
Yeah.
And you look at the facial features of these corn snakes, the red one and this yellow one, this one, it has more of a wider mouth, whereas the red one is more of a very narrow head. I mean, I may pop over and try to pull them out because they're not that difficult to get. Then I have a couple ball pythons in another area too as well. So, I've had garter snakes. I stopped doing garter snakes because they're too much of having to feed fish.
And not to mention their bowel movements are just horrendous.
Yeah, and
that is a musty smell that you will never get rid of. You know what I mean?
They do. I mean, I don't mind it, but it's like some people wouldn't. And I usually don't let students hold my North America snakes because they're a little wiggly and they can get scared. I let them do the ball pythons because it's slow and gentle and easygoing. I just had to make sure there's no mouse smell nearby and stuff. And they're usually pretty good, So for me, I guess the ball python would be the easiest one as a snake for a school.
I definitely don't disagree with you there. In terms of if we're looking at finicky and based off of movement. Although you can get a very docile ball python, but which I'm sure you know, when it comes to snakes, it's all about how you begin your approach.
Yeah.
And that's what kids don't really know. They don't they're scared of the head, and so you have children who are, they're holding the snake like this, and they're trying to stay away from the head, and then you're like, no, relax. You have to remember that animal doesn't have arms or legs, so its only means of staying on you is if you support the animal. And so even with like a corn snake, even though naturally we would expect it to be a lot more finicky and have a lot more movement, they usually don't have that issue as long as you know how to handle the animal. So without any question, I would highly recommend a ball python as well as a corn snake. Teen snake, I would be a little bit more wary due to the fact that you have a higher opportunity or a higher chance of getting bit, which in a school setting, you don't want that to happen, because you don't know if you're going to end up with infection with that child. You don't know how the parents are going to react. So it's, there's a lot. But with corn and ball pythons, at least, especially with corns, I never have an issue with them biting, just because they're relatively small species, very small size of head, good temperament, especially in the pet trade. And they're not finicky eaters. Ball pythons, I have had issues with eating, just because one will prefer a rat over a mouse. But majority of the time, you're cool. They're good about eating as long as temperatures are up there. So yeah, without a doubt. Now, I heard you have some native species from California. What do you have?
Well, one is a skinks, and I have to get my book out and to key out the skinks is the one lizard. The other one's a fence lizard. That's the one.
Western fence lizard?
Yeah, western fence, and then an alligator lizard.
Oh, nice.
And he's gone huge. I mean, I've worked with fence lizards before, and sometimes in the one habitat I had, they got mites, and the mites then just malnourished this lizard, and the lizard would die. And they didn't do so well with the type of habitat I have for the snakes. These ones are in a cage. They have a screen lid, lots of ventilation. There's gravel, and they've done well. Of course, because they're North American, they can tolerate the cold. It's not like some of the geckos that are in a more heated room, but they've endured and they keep thriving. And the skinks I only see once in a great while. I do a lot of mealworms. If we get crickets and stuff, I'll throw in there. And
does it have a red head?
What was that?
Does it have a red head?
Could be.
It might be a Gilbert skink, which actually I just recently caught one not so long ago. They have a little bit of sexual dimorphism where the male has a very large, wide head, and it's a very red orangey color compared to the rest of the body, which is more of like a plain gray, almost like a yellow, almost like this bearded dragon here, but really silky and smooth. But if it's that one, I love that species. I find them super cool and so nice to find.
Well, it does quite well. The skinks hides most of the day. The alligator lizard's the one probably out most of the time. The fence lizard, it comes and goes, and it goes under the light, and it just sits there. It looks at you. When I come to the cage, it thinks it's going to get fed. Then I put the food in there, and it feeds.
And it feeds.
I mean, they've done well. I mean, without, in a sense, very little care, just watching and observing, make sure, like if they're getting skinny or anything. But no, they've flourished and they've done well. And of course, they can't interbreed, so I don't have to worry about any problems there.
Yeah, no, that's why I like reptiles, and I think they make great pets for school settings in almost every age group. Except I would not recommend them with children under 4 and under, just due to the fact that your immune system compromised at that point. But any other age group, you're pretty much set, because it's an animal that's very easy to take care of. Once summer comes around, you can even send them possibly even with the kids themselves, and maybe they can actually watch them in their home until school starts again. And that could also be like a little project. One of my favorite things when I was in high school, I had a teacher, her name was Miss Clapp. And what she would have us do is she would have us research species that were native to where we lived. We would then build an enclosure or a terrarium for that species, and then we would go out and look for it, capture it, and bring it back, and identify it, make sure it was that species, watch it, take a look at its behavior, And then after about 2 weeks, we would go back and release it back into the wild. And I think that's something else that's very unique with the majority of schools that are in the United States that teachers have a huge advantage of. Because you're a biology teacher, correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. With biology, I feel like kids have a lot more fun when it's hands-on, and that's how I learned. So when I did I had a class at a camp called Camp Pines. That's exactly what I did with all the kids. We would look at all the species, we would build enclosures, and then we would go out and catch them. I think at the end of camp, I had over 60 different species that we had collected just that 1 year. Yeah, the kids had a great time. I wish I had photos to show you. It was insane. I had I had 8 to 10 different species of snakes, and then just tons of species of lizards and insects that we just found everywhere. It was a blast.
What state was that at?
That was Camp Pines in Arizona.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Not to mention frogs and amphibians that we found. Those are a lot of fun too, but they require a little bit more water due to the fact that they require moisture.
Was similar to, I worked at Sunset Lake Camp and Leone Meadows.
Okay.
And at Sunset Lake Camp, we had a nature center building. We built an additional area, which basically like a building, except it had fiberglass and screen and sand gravel. And we had rats, we had mice, we had squirrels. Some of them were things that people gave to us, and we had, we had different reptiles and snakes inside, and we had a whole bunch of little animals. I mean, a variety of stuff, I should say. And we had even a petting zoo with goats and sheep and a cow and chickens and ducks.
Awesome.
So when the kids come, they can interact with them.
Yeah.
And when they see it, then they don't forget it, because versus just saying, here's a picture, this is what a cow looks like. But when you see the real animal, then you understand a little more.
Mhm.
And I guess that's why I use animals in my classroom, because they won't forget it. You know,
No.
they're probably not going to remember what they read in their English class out of a literature book. But when they've seen an animal and they saw a praying mantis, oh, here it is. Here's how it ate the grasshopper. They're not going to forget those things.
No, and they don't. And that's why I love biology, and maybe one day I'll become a professor. But if I ever do, I promise you, my classroom is going to be as wild as it could possibly get outside. I'm probably gonna fight with the principal a little bit too much. No, you can't have venomous. Why not? I have permits.
Oh, that's the thing. Yeah, that's another thing too. As a teacher, will your administration support what you have? And I know when I interview for jobs, I let them know. I said, I use animals in my classroom.
Mhm.
If you don't like it, then it's not gonna be good here for me to work.
Yeah.
And my principals have usually been helpful. I mean, they have not discouraged it. They don't come and say, oh, what new animal you're gonna get. They just accept it, and as long as you can keep it under control.
Absolutely.
That's the thing. And I would say Charity asked me earlier about a worst case scenario, and I talked about a snake getting bit. I mean, a snake getting loose. But you talked about, it's not good to have animals biting children.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I had a situation where it was a 6-foot red-tailed boa constrictor.
Mm.
And I had these nice big cages, and I would let students hold it. And this is grades 5 to 8 now, upper elementary.
Younger. Okay.
And they were educated. They were told, here's the rules. If you hold the animal, here's the rules. And I had rats nearby. And one of the rules is, do not take the snake to the rats.
Yeah.
I think he was a 7th grader, this boy, and he was, he was athletic and stuff. But he broke the rule. He went up there holding this snake curled around his neck, holding the head out, and he went up to the rat cage. Of course, his mouth started moving, and that snake turned around and bit him right here in the face.
Oh, and it was a red-tailed boa, you said?
And I was there like, oh my word. So he took the
Yeah.
snake, put it away. And of course, my first response is, what's the parent going to do? The parent was very understanding. I said, because we did the medical treatment for him, filled in the forms if you need to go to the hospital or ER, whatever you need to do. And the mom understood. I said, well, he broke the rule.
Yeah.
He was told not to take it to the rats. He took it to the rat. This is what happened. And the mom says, that's fine. I understand. And of course, it healed up. I mean, it wasn't a permanent injury or anything like that. but that's where it could have gotten really bad. A parent could have had a cow, goes to the board, says, get rid of your animals. And then if you think about it, one action would have stripped your classroom of all these pets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something, again, another decision when people think about animals, of course, you're not going to get too much of an issue. Maybe, again, parents can get ballistic over a hamster bite, but if an animal bites, are you willing to deal with what the school decides?
The consequences of it. Yeah, absolutely.
And
And
so
go ahead.
do as much as possible to let them know. And there are some times I say, no, you can't hold these animals. No, you can't do that. If I know the student and I see they're being responsible, I'll let them. But first time people, or if I don't know how they behave, like when I had my tarantula, I usually wouldn't give it to them because all it takes is they freak out, it falls down, kills it.
Yeah, you run that risk quite a bit. But that's the other thing in regards to species wise is what are you willing to take a risk with, which is why I don't usually put ball pythons so high up, just due to the size of the teeth. That's my biggest thing when I think of children and a bite. When you're talking about king snakes and corn snakes and even bull snakes or gopher snakes, they don't use their teeth so much as just overpowering the other animal. While these other animals, such as ball pythons and red-tailed boas, the size of their teeth are a lot larger because they're taking larger prey down. So when you get a bite, I was bit by a 5-foot ball python right here on this finger. I won't show the only finger because I'll be, flipping everybody off. So, but this middle finger was right here on this knuckle. I was by myself. Oh, and the other coolest thing I heard you say was you turned your cabinets into cages, right?
Yeah.
I did the same thing, but I did that to hide them from my mom.
Oh.
I put plexiglass on my dresser drawers. So I would put the plexiglass, but I would leave it just a little bit so I could put folded shirts on top of it. And then I had a little door in the back. So I put the plexiglass, I glued it, and then I would fold shirts on top. So anytime my mom would open them, she didn't know there was a snake, just nice and neatly folded shirts. I got caught like a year later with like all of my drawers just full of snakes. I was in so much trouble. I think I was 12. I'm a pretty bad kid. But when I was bit by that ball python on the finger and I was by myself and it was coiled up, so I had no help getting the animal off and those teeth were just digging into the knuckle, that had to be the most painful bite I have ever experienced so far in my life, that ball python. By
How old were you?
I was probably 20, 21. That was painful. So that's another worry when I even do my shows, like the Wild Man Dance shows, because I do a lot of educational talks with kids and stuff. If I have anything that is a ball python or a boa of any of that species that can increase in size more than 4 feet, I will hold it, or I will make sure an adult is holding it and understands that the head needs to be away from the child at all times. They can touch the rest of the body, but the head is no longer available to the child, just to prevent a tooth. Ugh.
Well, that's what I do when I work with smaller children. I don't just say, here you go, have fun.
Yeah,
I've been tagged a few times by mine. I had one grab me on my finger because I was in the process of feeding and she mistook my finger, and it was sort of a shock. The teeth were there, they left the mark, but she hit it and let go.
It was a little tap, yeah.
But it was more of a shock, because it is quite like you said, the teeth are quite big and they do envelop. But with children of a certain age, I usually keep this head directed away. I say, don't touch the head because the snake can get upset if you hit its head too much. You just pet the back end. But usually when it gets to high school and I know the students understand what it means to work with such an animal, and my ball pythons, my biggest one is about 4 feet, and the other ones are smaller than that. I have 3, and they're pretty mellow. But sometimes too, I have some students that help me in the feeding process. But if I'm going to show them, I keep all food away. I was thinking, well, maybe I should go show the snake, but then I'm sitting there thinking, I have this thing right here, which would get my big yellow corn snake get real excited real fast if she got this set.
Oh.
So I said, well, maybe another time, we can do I mean, I had a field trip all day, but if I had more time, I can get more stuff ready, or we can go around and I would show you with my phone, say, here's what I have with the ideas. I mean, right now I'm just explaining it, but I'm confined to this spot.
Yeah.
My whole classroom is designed for science, for nature.
That's
I
awesome.
mean,
That's
I have
awesome.
all sorts of stuff, and it's little, I guess it's like heaven. You can't explain it unless you see it. That type of
Yeah.
thing.
Well, we're gonna just end this here. We can continue a conversation later, but thank you everyone for joining us here on Research on the Road. Thank you, Mr. Wallman, and thank you, Dan, Waldman Dance Show.
Okay.
Mr. Wallman, it was an honor and a pleasure. Let me know
Nice
next
to
time
meet
you're in
you, Jared.
California. We'll have to go herping together sometime.
Wow. Okay.
God bless. Take care.
Take care.